You're not valuable just because you're knowledgeable. Your true value isn't even found in what you know. It's found in how you share what you know.
All right, guys, you're welcome back to Bespoke. By popular demand, we're revisiting Apron loafers. Some of you have asked that I do the design right on the last, so that's what we're going to do. Let's get into it. First thing you need to do, of course, is to measure the last. But what is a last? In shoemaking, we basically mold a piece of leather over the form of a feet known as last. It's ironic that it is the first thing that we handle in shoemaking, but it is called last. So what the yellow stuff you saw that I had on that last is masking tape, which we taped over the last so that we can draw the design on it. So I start measuring on the outside part of the last. And as you can see, I measured along the length of the outside part of the last up till the tip. As you can see, this last came to about 34 cm, and that is going to be our last length. The next thing I do typically is to draw the center line. When you're drawing your center line, I usually like to tell people, turn the last away from yourself and turn it to yourself. Do that back and forth, and you will get a better view of the center of the last. And then all you need to do is to roll out some masking tape on a flat surface, draw a straight line on that masking tape, and you can use the straight line that you got to connect the dots, and you would have your center line. All of this is simple. So let me just interject here and say that the reason I'm doing this is because some of you maybe find it a little bit difficult to follow along when I do a discussion of pattern creation on a mean form. You guys want to see it on the last, you want the design done on the last. So I'm going to do it for this apron loafers, then I'll do it for a derby and an Oxford. So like we said earlier on, the last length here is 34 cm. 34 cm last length. Now if we divide that last length by 5, we divide it by 5, that will be the distance from the back going upward on the center line. So we mark in 1/5, the last length divided by 5. 34 divided by 5 came to 6.8 cm. So that's the back. You see there is the counterpoint. I typically add about 1 cm above the counterpoint to get the back height, which is really where the back of the shoe is going to start. You can start from your counterpoint, but I like to start from the back height, 1 cm above the counterpoint. Now we will do another division of this last length, divided by 4. That came to 8.5. That's going to be the division. That's going to be the measurement of a point on the center line. But to do that, we find the widest points on this last on the inside and on the outside. Then if we join those points together like this. So you saw what I did. I placed the last on a flat surface and I marked the widest point in front and the widest point on the other side. Now this line that I drew from those two widest points is known as the vamp line, and the intersection point in the middle of the center line is known as the vamp point. Now we divided the last length by 4 before, so that is the distance from the vamp point going upward on the center line. So 8.5, we mark that there, and that is a point known as the instep. So we've gotten the vamp point, the instep, the counterpoint and the back height, and then of course the balls, those two widest points. I mark the tip of this last. Don't bother about the marking. We're not doing mean forms for this. Then we measure this vamp line. We measure it. It came to about 9 cm, and we divide that into 2. So this vamp line, we divide it into 2, and then we draw a line from the counterpoint, we place our tape and draw a line from the counterpoint to that middle of the outside vamp line. So this line that we draw like so is what is known as the quarter line. Now, many of you who have been following my videos know all of this. This is being done for many who are new viewers and who may not know exactly where to look for videos where all of these have been discussed in the past. Now, what we are designing is a loafers. It's a male loafers. For male loafers, I like to start the tongue of the loafers, which is the front of the loafers, 1 cm beneath the instep. Remember that instep that we marked? So we start 1 cm beneath the instep. If it's a female loafers, you can start lower, but for male, I start about 1 to 1.5 cm beneath the instep. Now, there is a rule that I use in design, which is that all the major parts of the shoe going along the length of the shoe will be 1/4 of the length of the last length. Then all the major parts going across the length of the shoe will be 1/8. So that when you sum up all of that, you would have half of the shoe across and then the full length along. So following that rule, I will measure 90 degrees from that point where we say we are starting the tongue of our loafers, 1 cm beneath the instep. I'll draw a right angle from that point, and I'll simply mark in 1/8 of the last length on that line. So if 1/4 of our last length is 8.5, 1/8 of our last length will be 4.25. So on this new line that we drew from that point, 1 cm beneath the instep, we will mark in 1/8 of our last length, which is 4.25. So let's go ahead and mark that in. So mark in 4.25 on this line. So we mark that in. So this will be the width of the tongue of our loafers. Now, if I mark a point 1 cm just to make an angle of depression from the tongue, I mark 1 cm beneath the middle of that vamp line that we connected our quarter line to, and then from this new line that we have here, I just join those 2 points. And you see that with this, I have the outline of the tongue of these loafers if I simply curve this angle in like so. So I have the outline of the tongue of my loafers, and my basic loafers is taking shape. The next thing I will do is to draw a line running from the back height to that same point where our quarter line starts, or where it ends. So I'll draw from the back height, but rather than marking it all the way through, I'll stop at the intersection point, at the point where it intersects with the new tongue that we just drew, so that we can have this like this as our tongue and the top line of our loafers running from the back height. My design rule for the apron is to start it not from the terminal point of the tongue here, no, not there, but from the middle of the vamp line. So that's the middle of the vamp line there, and that's from where we are going to draw our apron. Now, I don't want to freehand sketch the apron, so I'm going to use some calculations. So 1/4 of the last length is 8.5, 1/8 of the last length is 4.25. So from the tip of this last, sorry for the odd angle, camera angle, from the tip I mark 1/8 of the last length. Now you can even freehand sketch it to that beginning point, but I still don't want to make it a freehand sketch. So in order not to make it a freehand sketch, I'll mark 90 degrees from that point, divide that 1/8 of the 1/8 of the last length into 2. That gave me about 2.1 cm, and then if I connect this point here by a straight line, these 2 points, if I connect those 2 points by a straight line, it creates an angle that I can simply curve in like so to have the outline of my apron. So you see that by deploying different measurements of proportions of this last, I have basically been able to draw and outline a design of my apron loafers. The next thing I think that remains to be done is to just outline the loafers with a pen, design the bow that typically comes on apron loafers like this. To design that bow, I simply start about 1 cm from away, 1 or 7 cm away from the intersection, 7 mm, sorry, away from the intersection point of the tongue and the top line. Draw a right angle from there, basically a right angle to the center line, of course. And then if I want the bow to be about 3 cm, I mark in 3 cm on the center line, draw another right angle from that point, coming downwards, and then I can basically connect the 2 lines to be parallel to the top line. Connect those 2 lines to be parallel to the top line, and then draw it in like so. So ladies and gentlemen, I can use my pen to outline the bow. You can put whatever design you want to put on the bow, or you can add holes for tassels if you want to make it a tassel loafers, but I'll simply just do the bow and leave it as it is. Now this intersection point of the tongue and the top line is very important, because what we are doing is a stitched hand stitched apron. So that's the point. We have to mark it clearly, and that's from the point where the stitching holes for all the holes that we would have on this apron will start. I spaced it by 7 mm apart. I spaced them 7 mm apart. Of course, as you get to the terminal point, you'd have to cheat a bit to accommodate all that you need to do. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the design of the apron loafers. In the next video, I'll cut it out, we'll lay it out without the necessity of a mean form, and then we'll create our patterns from this design. So I hope to see you in the next video, but God bless you. And this is a bonus video for Tip Thursday. God bless you.